Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. I want to share with you a way for you to practically build in public to gain credibility, exposure, and hopefully shorten your path from learning to code to hired. Why is building in public so important, especially if you are a career changer or coming from a non-traditional background? Basically, if you didn't go to a school and learn to code or learn computer science, you are an outsider to tech, right? And the biggest barrier that I see to entry is not the skills acquisition piece. That piece is tough. Do not get me wrong. It is tough to learn to code. JavaScript is a tough thing to learn. All these things are difficult. Then you learn them, right? Over months or a year or however long it takes you to get barely hireable. And you think, great, I got the skills, and no one will hire you. This is a story you've read online. I've heard this from so many people, too many to count. And what it boils down to a lot of times is you don't show the people that want to hire you why they should hire you. You have no credibility. You have no visibility. You don't have anything that indicates to somebody that doesn't know you that you could do the job. You know you can. You've learned all these skills and you've done all this stuff, but you can't get people to trust you, right? Imagine me. I've spent the last 10 years writing code for a living. If I walked into Starbucks tomorrow and I said, hey, I want you to hire me as a barista, they're going to look at me and say, cool, what kind of coffee shop experience do you have? And I'm like, none. And they say, okay, have you ever made coffee or something? I don't even drink coffee. They're like, okay, cool. To the next. Right? They don't care. They don't care that I may have been an engineering manager or have all these followers on LinkedIn or any of that stuff. They say, yeah, what does that matter to me? So what does that have to do with you? You're transitioning from car mechanic, lawyer, French fry chef, whatever. And you want somebody to look at you and says, yes, I'm going to hire you as a software developer. But there's no proof that you can do it besides some certificate you got from a bootcamp or online program. Newsflash. Nobody, not a single person wants to see that certificate or that piece of paper you got from whatever school, unless it's like Stanford, MIT, or one of the top schools, right? That's why people go to colleges, not because they learn something so unique and crazy that you can't learn online. It's for the validation. So if you go to a program like Parsity, right, or you learn on your own, whatever, you need to build in public. Not just because it's a good thing to do to learn how to articulate your thoughts and speak technically, but it will help you get hired faster. We're going to go over how. We have this program called Dev 30, by the way. Part of Dev 30 is about learning JavaScript. That's a big piece of it. But a bigger piece, or a piece that's just as important, if not more important, is how to build in public. And if I'm being completely honest, few people actually follow through with this piece. Although it is probably the most transformational piece that we teach during these 30 days. The habit of building in public will help you out tremendously. Yo, by the way, I've added some learning in public templates in the show notes of this episode that I want you to grab. Please take them, tag me if you use them, and I hope it helps you get some traction on LinkedIn or wherever you choose to write. I should also let you know there are less than 10 spots available for Parsity. Work in a super small cohort with a team of software engineers, including me, to learn to build complex software as a full stack developer and get hired in 2025 and change careers the right way. If you want to work with me one-on-one to get ready to pass the admissions challenge and crush it, schedule a call using the link below in the show notes. And now back to the episode. Let me tell you about my own journey of building in public. I didn't start, by the way, wanting to talk online or build in public or get any amount of internet fame at all. That was not a thing I was trying to reach. Now that I have a business, it is certainly a piece of what I do. I build in public. I talk in public. I have an internet persona, and I do really enjoy it. It's helped me meet and make friends with tons of people. But when I started off, I had a CTO that I was working with around 4 or 5 years ago now, and he read one of my articles on Medium, where I've been writing for years. I recently went viral on there, but the previous 7, 8 years or 9 years that I've been writing on there, none of my pieces ever got more than 100 claps or 100 people that liked them, right? Really, really minimal visibility. almost nobody knew that I was writing on there. I just did it for myself, and it was a way to help me articulate a lot of the things I was learning. I thought maybe somebody will find this useful. Like I would write really deep technical articles. I wouldn't really talk about the kinds of things that I'm talking about on this show, about like career transformation or personal transformation. I was really, really deep into the technical side of things. So I wrote these really technical articles in the hopes that it would help people out. I did at one point write an article about my journey from being an addict, living kind of a street life and doing crime, into being a software engineer. I thought the story was interesting. I thought maybe people could benefit from hearing it. I also really didn't want people to read it, if I'm being completely honest, because I was embarrassed about it. I still am a little bit. It's why I don't talk about it a lot. I make hints to it or references to it sometimes, but I don't like to get into the nitty gritty of it because I don't know. I don't know if people will hear it and it will turn them off or if they will trust me less. But I wrote it and I published it. It actually gained some traction. The CTO of the company where I was working read it. He's like, dude, why aren't you sharing this story? And I thought, well, I did. I put it on Medium, right? He's like, man, you should share it on LinkedIn. You should talk about this on LinkedIn because you always talk about these super technical things on LinkedIn. But I never knew this about you. I never would have guessed. And I thought, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that. I said, I don't want to mess up my job opportunities in the future or make people afraid to work with me. Or maybe maybe they just won't relate. Like, who can relate to that kind of story? Who's going to read that's a software engineer and say, oh, yeah, I know what that's like. I'm like, I think I'm just going to turn people off. He's like, dude, you got to do it. He said, promise me you'll do it. And he shared a story with me that was also really personal that he wrote about online about him trying to end his own life. And when he wrote about that, I read it. And even though I've never tried to do that, I understood the feelings of depression, of feeling like you're not moving forward in life, feeling like things won't ever get better. And just reading that somebody else that I looked up to that was in a position like him had gone through some of that and felt the same feelings made me feel not only less alone, but like if there was hope for him and he was able to transition out of that dark period, then where could I go in my own career? I think that's really important that we see ourselves and other people, and then we can kind of use them as a template or as a roadmap to where we might want to go in the future. So sometimes I'll expose these not so great parts of my life, whether it's things I messed up on at work or things in my personal life that were really bad. And then hopefully people can resonate with that somehow and think, okay, cool. If this dude did that and he doesn't seem particularly smart or anything or particularly different than me, then I can probably do the same thing too. So that's what led me on my building and public journey. Over the time, I've learned a lot about how to actually gain traction. I went from basically 0 to 30,000 followers. On Instagram, I went from 0 to 10,000 followers on a new account. Even on x.com, where I rarely post, I gained about 1,000 followers. What I'm trying to tell you is that I've learned a lot about the art of writing online to not only get visibility, but to get the right kind of engagement. And I want to share that with you here because I think it's important, because what can be really frustrating is when you write online or you want to build in public or share your story and you get no feedback. So we're going to break down why you want to build in public. 1, accountability. 2, to build community. 3, to improve your communication skills. The 4th one, the most important one, discoverability. Remember this, most of writing code for a living is writing. When you document your journey online, you have proof that you are growing. This gives you some evidence that you are, in fact, moving in the right direction. This is how you can keep off imposter syndrome, or at least rebuttal your imposter syndrome. When your mind is telling you, this little monkey in your brain that's dancing around that you think is your conscience, which is really just a bunch of chatter in your brain. And it's saying, you don't know what you're doing. You're never going to get hired. You've seen the YouTube video. This dude's smarter than you. This woman's smarter than you. No one's going to take you seriously. Your father told you you'd never make it. And so did your teacher in 2nd grade. You're just a dummy. When all that junk is in your brain, and it is junk, by the way, this is not the voice of God or some deity or some deeper consciousness that you are tapping into. This is just noise in your head that comes from all these memories. So how do you ward this off? How do you say, nope, that's not accurate. What you're saying is a bunch of foolishness. You look back at the stuff you've written and you say, okay, I was writing about for loops at this point. Now look at me. Now I'm writing about React. I was writing about React. Now I'm writing about managing people. Oh, I was writing about managing people. Now I'm writing about owning my own business. I can look back at proof that my life has gone in a generally positive direction. Most of our lives go in a generally positive direction, by the way. We just don't know it because we don't have any context. We look at ourselves now, we don't remember what we were doing last year or 4 years ago or 5 years ago. So having proof evidence is a really great way to keep track of your progress. And you can do it just by writing online or for yourself. You're also going to make yourself a lot more discoverable in a sea of people looking for work. Remember this, your greatest differentiator is that you are you. There's a lot of people out there. There's one you. I don't care how corny that sounds. It is true. Also think about this statistic. 99% or more of the people that are on LinkedIn or online will never publish or write anything. They are there to scroll and troll. Less than 1% are the content creators. Do you want to be part of the 99% or part of the 1%? The 99% are all trying to attack the same opportunities. That top 1% is going to be highly discoverable, much more than the sea of people out there that you don't even know are looking. Now, that 99% thing might trip you out. You might be saying, there's zero way. There's a dude that wrote a book that I'm reading called The Coding Career Handbook, and he even wrote about this phenomenon. He actually suggested that in order to grow your traction online, you engage with larger accounts and you comment when they write something that you resonate with or something that you found really helpful. And if they like or comment back to you, that can really boost your engagement and following. And it may even create like a real connection. And people think, well, that can't be right? Because the big accounts, they have everybody commenting under them. This is the red car theory. It feels like everyone is writing online. The moment you start writing online, you think, geez, I didn't realize there's all these creators out there. Now I'm just one of many creators. Brian was totally wrong. There's not 99% of us scrolling and trolling. It feels like 99% of us are actually learning in public. This is the red car theory. Basically, you are thinking about buying a car and you go buy this nice, beautiful red car and you're driving around. Next thing you know, it feels like everybody's driving the same car. You're like, oh, wait, what the hell? I thought I was the only one with this red car. And that's because that is raised up in your consciousness. Now you're very conscious of the red car. You're driving one. You're like, yeah, look at me. I'm cool in my red car. So you start noticing it more because you're looking for it more. Most people are not writing online. This is the red car theory at play, that when you do something, you're highly conscious of it and you'll start to see it more and more and more places. Like when I became a software engineer, it felt like everybody was learning to code. Before that, I didn't know a single person learning to code. I never even thought about it, never even considered learning to code until I did. And then none of my friends or family were into that kind of thing. The moment I started doing it, I just started noticing it and hanging around more people. And it felt like everybody was doing it. The reality is not everybody is doing that. Here's the other thing. Most people are not consistent. They're going to fall off. Use this to your advantage and make a schedule you can commit to when it comes to posting online. Now, where should you actually post online? I am highly biased. I've used TikTok. I've used Instagram. I've used X. I've used LinkedIn. I prefer LinkedIn heads and shoulders over every single one of those platforms that I just spoke about. I'm very biased though. Here's the best thing about LinkedIn. People aren't anonymous. You have a face and you have a company that is linked to a person's profile. This lessens the amount of ridiculous kind of banter and toxic type of rhetoric that you read on there. Employers hang out there because if you're writing on LinkedIn, it's probably because you want to get hired. Is your hiring manager hang out on X and posting hot takes and inappropriate memes? I sure hope not, but if they are, maybe it's not the best place to meet them. LinkedIn is professional. It's easier to stand out. It's much easier to gain traction on LinkedIn than basically any other platform. Again, you have such a low amount of people that create content and a high amount of people that consume it that it is not that difficult to stand out. Think about this. Where are other developers hanging out? Where are hiring managers hanging out? They're probably hanging out on LinkedIn. If somebody is looking to hire somebody, they're hanging out on LinkedIn. Why not fish in the pond with the most fish, if that analogy works? What I'm trying to say is, why go to these other platforms where people really aren't there for professional reasons at all? And now I've read about people, and even heard of a dude. I met a guy that I was working with. He got hired off a comment from a YouTube channel. This is really unique and it's an interesting story. The reason it's interesting and unique is because it's unlikely to happen, right? He met a dude from YouTube. He commented on the video. He DM'd him later, and then he ended up working at the same place where this YouTuber was employed. Very interesting story. Is it likely? No. Is it a strategy you could use? No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't tell my kids to do that. I would tell my kids to do the exact same thing I'm telling you. Be on LinkedIn, use that as your platform for growth, and write content that's going to resonate and gain traction and visibility, exposure, and validation on that particular platform. Now, again, I'm very biased. I know for a fact that X.com works. I've met a ton of great people on Instagram. And in fact, I've met most of my customers from my business off of Instagram before I took over Parsity. So with that being said, you could do this on any platform. But again, the one I'd recommend over all the others, LinkedIn. I've spoken a lot about the followers I got and the numbers. Those are interesting and they're cool. Like, yeah, but check this out, right? Likes ain't cash. Don't chase likes. Likes ain't credibility either, right? Your goal is to establish credibility on LinkedIn or whatever platform. It's not necessarily to become a mini influencer, though we will talk a little bit about how you could do that. Here are topics I think you should avoid. Romanticizing rejections. There was this dude I used to follow on LinkedIn years ago. He had so many followers, so much engagement, so much traction. All he ever talked about was how he got rejected from interviews. And at first you felt bad for him. He said, that sucks, man. Don't worry, you're going to get the next one. All this positive reinforcement, right? After about the 10th time, I'm like, there's something off with this dude, because who gets rejected 10 times in a row from interviews? First of all, how many interviews are you getting? After like the 20th or 30th one, I'm like, either this person has something wrong that they're doing and they're not taking any feedback, because all sorts of people reached out too saying, hey, I'd love to help you out. Let me give you some feedback. And it just felt like this person was just using this for like clickbait after a while. I'm like, I just didn't believe it. And also imagine if you're an employer and you're reading that, you're saying, woof, you got rejected from 20 or 30 companies and now you want me to take a chance on you? I'm not doing that. Why would I want to do that? It's obvious there's something wrong here. Why would I want to give you another shot? You know what I mean? If you got rejected that many times, then, you kind of self-rejected yourself from me at this point. So even if you are getting rejected a ton, maybe don't write about it as your only piece of content, even though it can give you a lot of engagement, which is why I suspect people like to post these kinds of things. Related to that is being overly negative. I see this so much. I've had people write to me to email me, really mean emails sometimes, by the way, and they'll like tell me how I don't know anything, or, the market sucks and no one's getting hired and I should shut up, or just these mean kind of pointless emails that don't really move the needle, or they don't result in good conversation, right? So what I'll do sometimes, because I think I'm a nice person, I try to be a good person, right? I'll email them back and say, hey, you know what? Maybe you're right. Why don't you send me your LinkedIn? Why don't you send me your resume? Let me check it out. I checked out a few of them. Maybe they're listening to this episode right now and hating my guts. And what I did was I looked through their LinkedIn. I'm like, geez, no wonder this person can't get hired. Everything is negative. Like the only posts they have are negative. No one's hiring in this industry. I learned to code and it sucks. Or I went to a boot camp and they suck and that's why I can't get hired. And I'm like, whether or not these are true, imagine somebody that's a stranger reading this. They don't know the context. They don't know you. They don't know the company you went to or the boot camp you went to or the program you went to or anything about your situation. All they know is you are talking negatively about somebody else in public. That's all they see. Does that mean they would ever want to take a chance on you? If they did want to take a chance on you and they saw that kind of thing, would they invite you in? If you were the owner of that company or a company and you were trying to hire somebody and you were going through the list of people and you saw that on one person's profile, would you want to call that person in? I don't think so. Recruiters, companies, employers are looking for their best interest. They have a sea of candidates, even when it was an employee's market. So basically, even when the market was skewed and you really, really, really needed software engineers and like they were paying the top dollar, you still had a ton of candidates. There was never a situation where there was less than one person or only a couple people going for the same job. There's always a bunch of candidates. So why would you want to stick out for being super negative? Lastly, rage bait and clickbait. These are posts like React sucks and here's why. I hate TypeScript. It's the dumbest thing ever. Here's my top 5 reasons. This will get you a ton of engagement. It will not get you any allies. I see people making accounts that basically only do this. And if YouTube is littered with this kind of stuff, it's like, the economy's crashing in 2 days. Here's how you're going to lose all your money. Or why AI is coming for your developer job. Or, tech layoff, the real future of tech. No one will be hired by the year 2026. These things get tons of clicks. People watch them because they get fear, or they watch them because like, I hate what this person's saying, and they leave a mean comment. By the way, this is actually a tactic a lot of content creators will use, by the way. They will post things they know aren't true specifically to rage bait people, because the engagement, the algorithm doesn't necessarily care if the engagement is negative or positive. It just cares that there is engagement. So think about this the next time you're following somebody online and you're thinking, why does this person say all this negative, terrible stuff? Or maybe you believe this negative, terrible stuff. They're doing this because they get paid to do this. This is how you farm engagement. Stay away from these things, and let's think about things you actually should be talking about. Here are topics with a high return on investment. Interesting problems you encounter. Today, I was learning Redux, and what I didn't understand was X, which led to Y. Here are 3 takeaways. Short, to the point, talks about a technology that people are usually interested in learning, and tells your experience with it. Also, because you're talking about your own experience, it's not like anybody can correct you and say, well, that's totally wrong, you idiot. You say, no, that's my experience with it. So when you're talking about your experience, you're coming from the position of, hey, I'm sharing this with the intention to hopefully help somebody else out who may have come across the same hurdle. I'm not sharing this to let you know some novel thing about it. I'm letting you know a mistake I made and how I fixed that mistake. You can also talk about stats, statistics on your user base. You can also talk about a project you're creating. And a really interesting thing to talk about when you're creating a project is not like the technology necessarily, but how are you promoting it? How are you growing the user base? That is a really interesting topic, and one that I rarely see people write about. So instead of writing about, today I deployed the app on AWS and it crashed, that's an interesting story. What would be even cooler, I think, is today I'm launching my app and I got my first 5 users. Here's a link to sign up. What I'm noticing is some lagging when we have more than 20 users at a time on the site. I'm wondering how I can fix this. If you have ideas, let me know. That is a really cool problem to talk about. This is also very difficult, but chasing this kind of problem, right? If you reverse engineer, like, what's the kind of post you want to write about? What do you want to write about? Do you want to write about making an app that has a bunch of users? Then make an app that has some users. How do you go and get users? Figure that out. That will lead you to all sorts of other interesting problems that you can talk about online. Related to that are cool features that you are using in your project. There was a person in Dev30 today that had a really cool project, I think for like high school basketball statistics or something like that. They could talk about, this is a project I'm building. I'm working on this feature right now. I'm a little lost if I'm being honest, but here's how I'm planning on doing it. Any feedback you would give a person like me. That's an interesting thing. It gets the right engagement. It gets people talking and offering you suggestions, which could help you out and also lead to genuine connections. Lastly, snippets of code that ask for feedback on a certain pattern that you're using. This can get really good engagement. It's also a bit scary, right? Because if you post code, people might tear it apart and say, oh, this is terrible. That's also I like to post on LinkedIn because people are much less likely to say, this is terrible. Also, just block people. Just straight up. If a person's being a jerk to me or I don't want to engage with them, I'm blocking them immediately. I'm not thinking about it twice. I'm blocking them and I'm never hearing from them again. And those kind of people are out there, if I'm being honest, but that's okay. You're not posting to make them like you. You're posting so that when a recruiter goes onto your LinkedIn, they can look and see proof that you are, in fact, a software developer and not whatever your current career tells them you are. Now, as you're doing this, as you're posting, you're going to be gaining some comments, some likes. You're going to get very few at first. That's the reality. It takes a while to really build up your engagement and your traction and things like that, but that's okay. You're looking for quality over quantity by far. Quantity is not a good metric. Don't measure your success by likes. Measure your success by the people that you are making connections with. Who's engaging and commenting? Are they other junior developers? Good. Are they other non-junior developers like mid-level and senior? Better. Are they managers and people that have hiring decision and influence? The best, right? So networking is a weird term. We all say, you got to network. You just got to go out there and network. And you have some idea in your head of like going into a bar or one of those conferences or something like that with a stack of cards like it's 1982 and handed them out to people and thinking, yeah, I'm networking here. Take a card. Take a card. That's not networking, my friend. Networking is just making friends online. That's really it. So curate your feed. Prune your feed. Make sure that you're following people that are positive. Make sure you're not following too many influencers who are just trying to sell you stuff. If that means unfollowing me, then hey, that's what it means. But don't follow too many influencers. Follow people that write online, that talk about the problems and the things that you find interest in, and that are in your same industry or the industry you want to be in, like tech, for example, software. Follow those kind of people. Engage and follow the people that are in your comments, and then follow up every once in a while with a DM. You slide into their inbox and you say, hey, thank you so much for that suggestion you gave me. I'm actually working on this right now. I just wanted to tell you, here's the progress I've made. And if you ever want to check out this thing, just let me know. Boom, the person probably says, hey, thank you. Or maybe they don't say anything. You do this a few times, you see who actually engages and wants to talk and who doesn't. And once you establish that somebody actually wants to engage and talk and say, oh, no problem, really glad I could help out. You can always follow up with later like, hey, I noticed that your company is hiring, or I've always really wanted to work at a company like yours or be in your position. I'm really curious if you have like 5 or 10 minutes that we can talk maybe over the phone. I'd love to learn a little bit more about what you do. Is there a time this week that works for you? I'm available at boom, 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 boom. Make it really simple for them to say yes, right? So if you say, here's the times I'm available, I only want to speak for 5 to 10 minutes. Don't say half an hour. Don't say an hour. Nobody wants to talk to somebody they don't know for that long because it can get awkward. I do 15-minute phone calls, and I've done 600 of them so far over the years. I make them 15 minutes and I make them phone calls because 1, I don't want to be on camera because I may be walking around. 2, I make them 15 minutes because maybe it's an awkward call and I just want to end it early. It also just keeps it power packed, keeps it really nice and compact. You get directly to the meat of the conversation. You say, hey, how are you doing? Nice to meet you. Where are you from? Oh, cool. How's that going out there? Hey, what I really wanted to ask you, because I know we're short on time, is I just want to know this about the company where you work. And then you follow that up later with, maybe that turns into a referral. Maybe that just turns into a really good connection with somebody that may help you out down the line, or somebody that you just genuinely like. Now, when it comes to engagement and interacting with larger accounts or getting traction, like let's say your goal is to blow up on LinkedIn or something like that. Like, let's say you're like, yeah, you know what? I do kind of want to get like 10,000 followers, or whatever, 5,000. I have a message and I want to sell something. I do want to blow up. Here's how you do that. Here's how I did that. I've never really had many viral posts, but I have had incremental, steady growth over the years. It's gotten me to over 30,000 followers. And a lot of that has been commenting as a strategy. So I leave useful, genuine engagement under posts for accounts that are much larger than mine. For example, Danny Thompson, Eric Anderson. There's a few others out there, Rahul Pandey, Alex from Join Taro. There's a few big accounts out there, and if you comment under them, if you set the notification bell on those accounts, you'll be notified as soon as they post. And big accounts typically post at the same time every day because the algorithm rewards that consistency. So if you know when they're going to post and you follow up and leave a really good comment and say something that actually sparks engagement, like don't just say, I agree. Useless comment, right? It's like, yeah, that's cool, right? But you might say something like, oh, that's cool, you did that. I actually did it this way. Or they're talking about something that happened at work. Oh, that's really interesting because I heard that this was the way to do it, but I'm curious, what do you think? This can lead to a thread within the comments. It can lead them to actually engage with you, and then people follow you because of that. If you write a really good post later on and they're in your feed now, or you're in their feed now because maybe they followed you back and they repost you, that can lead to massive amount of engagement. This is a long-term strategy, by the way. Everything is long-term. Anybody promising you can get 10,000 or whatever followers in a month is silly, or using bots, or just doesn't understand how you get realistic, genuine engagement from people, not fly-by-night success that doesn't really result in anything meaningful. You can't sell stuff to people if they don't care about what you say. You can't engage with people or make them care about you if they don't like what you say. If you just post rage bait all day long, who's going to trust you? Right? That's not a good way to gain followers. A better way is to actually genuinely engage with people. I keep saying genuine because humans can smell when you're being disingenuous. We have an uncanny knack for that kind of thing. It's probably what's helped us throughout history to not become, wolf food or something like that, or get tricked by terrible people throughout history in the caveman years or whatever it is. So we can smell out when you're being disingenuous. So don't do it. Be genuine. Say what you really feel to an extent, and you're gonna go very far. Very lastly, we've talked a lot about networking online. It doesn't have to be online. It doesn't need to be with strangers that are on the other side of the planet, right? You are 7 degrees of separation from people you would never expect. I remember my mom told me this back in the days. I think a lot of people probably heard this. 7 degrees of separation between you and Will Smith. And that was stuck in my mind from like the time I was a child to now. And she said, there's only 7 degrees of separation between you and Will Smith. If you know somebody like your aunt and she knows somebody, they know somebody, 7 degrees, you're going to know anybody in the whole world. And now that I have studied graphs in computer science, I actually understand that this is probably mathematically correct. That if you go 7 layers above your friend network outside, if you take this view and think, okay, who's my first layer of connections? My mother, my father, my aunts, uncles, friends, and things like that. Who's in the next layer? The people they work with, their friends. Who's in that third layer? That means the friends of their friends and their employers and their aunts and uncles and families. Take that 7 layers out. You're basically connected to everyone in the world through these 7 degrees of separation, through these 7 layers of this graph network that we're all living in, basically. What I'm trying to say is, don't just go online, look for people that you know and ask them who they can hook you up with. You may think, I don't know anybody that's in software. You might. What you should do is, don't ask your mom to hook you up with somebody that she knows is hiring. Say, who do you know that might work in tech? Or do you know anybody that knows somebody that works in tech? Have them do a little bit of this for you. Ask them for warm leads. Say, hey, are any of your companies hiring for people in tech? You'd be shocked how many companies out there are hiring software engineers that you've never heard about. In fact, the majority of companies you've never heard of hire software engineers. Stack Overflow did a survey. 50% of developers work for companies with 50 or less people. You don't know who's hiring because of course you don't. No one's heard of these companies, but most of us work there, right? So asking for these kind of warm leads in your second and third party connections is a great way to find opportunities you never would have even thought about. I hope this is helpful. And to make this even more helpful for you, I've added my LinkedIn templates for writing posts in this episode. I've shared this a few times. I think it's really helpful. I use templates, by the way. I use a few writing tools when I want to publish articles or write things on LinkedIn. I use TypeShare, which I think is a really great way to write articles. It gives you a really great template and a format to write that's engaging. I use Taplio so I can look at the statistics on my LinkedIn. I don't think you need that if your goal is not to be an influencer or anything like that. And lastly, I use a tool called Authored Up, which is how I format my posts. I am not sponsored by a single one of these people. I pay for all these services. I think they're wonderful. I hope they make my content better and easier to consume and more engaging. And I hope you find it that way too. Anyway, see you around, and I hope that was helpful. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to Parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week.